Okay, this video is how to use the Jeppesen type CR4 for finding your wind drift when you're doing your pre-flight planning, or for finding your ground speed to determine how long it's going to take you for each leg. So what we do is, on the outer scale here, we have our TAS true airspeed of the aircraft. On this next scale here, we have the degrees of drift that we're going to have to adjust for, and on the inner scale we have the green angles for our wind, so 0, 90, 100, etc. Then on these scales here, these are our wind speeds, and if it's up here it's going to be a headwind, down here a tailwind, that would be a right hand crosswind and a left hand crosswind. Or sorry, a right wind from the right and a wind from the left. So what we do, the first thing we do is we set this big TAS triangle on our airspeed, and in this case I've set it to 100 knots. Then we use the green dial and we set the wind from the area forecast or from the TAF if you're using your local winds, and we turn it to the degrees. So in this case, let's say it's coming from 090, which is there. We turn that and we put it in line with that black 1C marker there. Now, then we have to write the wind speed. So the wind is coming from 090, so it's going to be a headwind if you were heading 090, and we put the wind speed on this scale. So let's say it's 20 knots. Now I could put a dot there, but a dot's very hard to read. So what you do is you put a circle. Try and do a circle where the middle of the gap is the wind speed. Now we've indicated a 090. So just to show you quickly, so you can get this through your head how it works, if we were then to fly in the opposite direction, we would have a tailwind of 20 knots. So if we turn it 180 degrees so that 090 is at the bottom, you'll now notice that we've got a tailwind of 20. And so that's all we're going to do, is use that to determine how much headwind or crosswind we have. So now what we do to determine that is, whichever way we want to fly, we make sure it's at the top. So if I wanted to fly 300, which is there, there's our wind. We now have a tailwind, and the tailwind is at approximately probably 18 knots, and it's from my right. There's a crosswind from my right, and if we read up that dot to that scale, the crosswind is around about 8 knots of crosswind from my right. And what that effectively means is that I need to head to my right so that I don't get blown off track from the right hand crosswind towards the left. Okay, so now what we do, it said 8 knots of crosswind. So if we had 8 knots of crosswind, how far to the right do we have to head? So all we do is we come around this outer scale, which is now, we're now using this as our wind speed scale, the very outer scale, until we find 8. So there's 10, 9, 8, and then we go in, and it gives us the degrees, which is 4.5 degrees from our heading that we wanted to head. So yeah, I wanted to head 300. I need to head 4.5 degrees to the right of 300, which means that I need to head 304 or 304.5 degrees. You're never going to be that accurate, so let's go with 304 degrees, and that should get me to my desired location. Now when it comes to ground speed, we said we have a tailwind of around about 18. So we were going to fly at 100 knots. We now have a tailwind speed of 18 knots, which means our ground speed is going to be 118 knots.